Stay tuned for Airgun Detectives.
Welcome to another episode of Airgun Detectives. I'm your host, JC, and our CO2 summer continues. We'll be winding that down here pretty quick though, but I'll still bring you some CO2 pistols occasionally, especially as the weather permits and I can continue to test those. So anyway, today I'm bringing you the Webley Mark 6 service revolver. This is the replica, and these are beautiful replicas. But before we get into that, do me a favor. If you hadn't subscribed, please hit the subscribe button down in the corner. Costs you absolutely nothing, but it really helps support the channel. Also, if you have an opportunity, check out my website, www.airgundetectives.com. Got some nice t-shirts there. I've got the new hats that I came out with. Also, the Generation 2 bipods. Those are also there. So check that out when you have a chance. All right, let's get back to our Webleys here. I've got both one in the battle finish, which is actually the pellet version. And then we have the BB version, which is just in a plain black finish. You guys didn't know, real Webleys, those were manufactured since 1830. Yeah, 1830. And then the Mark 6, the real ones, they made over 300,000 of those. And they produced them between 1914 and 1939. And they're actually the preferred sidearm of the British troops in World War I and World War II. So there's a lot of history with these guns. It was also adopted after that to some of the law enforcement agencies in Britain and some other countries. They're also pretty famous. These pistols have been featured in so many motion pictures, a lot of them, including The Godfather, to name one. So let's talk specifics about these. Okay, they're CO2 powered, and they take one 12-gram CO2. They are about 2.5 pounds, just so you know. They're about a 2.5-pound gun. It's a solid gun. It's all metal construction with the exception of the grip. Those are a polymer grip. The gun itself is about 11.25 inches long. And they shoot both, depending on what model you get. You can either get the pellet version or the BB version. And I'll show you real quick some of the features on these. So, they open simply like this. It's the coolest setup. Because then if you want to, let me move this out of the way. As far as loading these go, especially the pellet version, you can actually take the pellets without even removing the shell, and you can put the pellets right in the shell, right in place, just like that. See that? And so it makes it real simple to load because you can stare at all your shells all at once. But it's that simple. Now, the BB version, let's just set this down here. The BB version, it's pretty easy to load too. And the shells that come in the BB version, let's pull one out here. They actually have the little more of the rubber or polymer type tip here. And the best way to do that is take some BBs, and if you have a little can or a old pellet can or any type of container that the BBs can lay flat in like that, all you do is you take the shell and you push it directly down on the BB and it loads. Now, you can actually go really quick too because they sell a speed loader for this. As you can see, a speed loader. And you can use this same speed loader in the BB container just like that. You have your BBs in there so they're laying basically flat, single file. And then you can just take your speed loader and push it in. And look at that, all 6 just loaded within a second there. So that works out pretty good. So that's how you load those. Let me show you where the CO2 goes. Okay, the CO2 goes in the handle here. Well, if you notice, there's a little groove right here where you can pop a cover off. And you pop the cover, and then what's that going to expose? It'll expose the opening for your CO2. And what's great is you don't need a wrench or anything. It's got this little lanyard on the bottom. You just loosen that up. You drop your CO2 in like that, and then you just tighten it up. Wait for that hiss, and then you put the cover on. Just like that. It's that simple. So, we have both the pellet and the BB version. What's the main difference in them? Other than the obvious, the finish. Nothing except for the fact the pellet version has a rifled barrel. and the BB version has a smooth barrel. How's the performance? Well, they claim they'll shoot about 420 feet per second. But as always, we need to go out and test that and see how it'll perform. So we're talking 6 shots, 6-inch barrel. Let's see how it performs. So stay tuned for the next segment. All right, let's try our Mark 6 over the Crony. But what I'm going to do for you guys, we're going to shoot the BB version first. We're just going to use a 5.1 grain zinc BB. We'll shoot 5 shots over the Crony, average it out, give you your average feet per second. Then we're going to come back, we'll use the pellet version, and then I'm going to shoot the pellets over the Crony, and I'll talk a little bit more like that. So let's do the BB version first, and we'll come back and do the pellet. All right, so shot number 1. Continuing our CO2 summer. It's a nice day, it's about 83 degrees. So let's see how well we do. 433. 435. 435 again. Let's do shot number 4. 436. That's a heck of a standard deviation. Of course, I probably just jinxed it, but let's see what happens. And one more. That was an error, so let's shoot it again. 426. All right, so there's your average feet per second on your BB version. So let's move on to the pellet version and test it out. Okay, now we're going to test the pellet version. Okay, what I thought I would do is I'm going to shoot 5 shots over the Crony with a match green. It's a light pellet. It's a lead-free pellet. It's a 5.25 grain pellet. So it's pretty much going to show you what the maximum velocity you can get out of this pistol with a pellet. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover 2 other pretty common pellets so we can give you a realistic feet per second on those. So that way you'll have a good idea. So let's do 5 shots over the Crony. We'll average it out. All right, shot number 1. 542. And that's not an error, that is 542. And I'll explain why. Okay, shot number 2. 544. Shot number 3. 537. Shot number 4. 540. And shot number 5. 537. Yeah, I would say that's a pretty powerful pellet pistol, wouldn't you say? All right, now let me cover a couple other pellets. So we shot the RWS Basics, which is a 7-grain pellet. It's a 7-grain lead pellet, pretty common. What we got out of that was 462 feet per second. Not too shabby, 462 feet per second. Then we did your Premier Hollow Points that everybody has, a 7.9 grain, just to test it. We actually got 441 feet per second. Okay, so now you ask yourself, why does the pellet version shoot so much hotter than the BB version? The first and most obvious reasons is the style of pellet shells. So the BB shells, you have the BB that's at the very tip of this shell. It's stuck in the very tip. So when it fires from the tip. The pellets, on the other hand, the pellet shells, they're loaded into the back. So you're adding a little over an inch, almost an inch and a half here of barrel length, because the pellet actually gets to take up its speed from the back of the shell and then continue down the barrel. And that makes the big difference as far as velocity goes. It really does. And I'll address that with some of these other CO2 pistols in the future, and I'll show you how you can get more feet per second out of certain pellet pistols. But anyway, there's your performance on the pellet pistol. Let's move forward and go on to the next segment. All right, let's test the accuracy on our Webleys here. We'll start with the rifled pellet version. We'll shoot 6 shots. We'll see how well it groups. Then we'll switch to the BB version. We'll shoot 6 shots with the BBs, and then we'll swap out and put pellet shells in the BB pistol with a smooth barrel, just to see how well that groups as far as smooth bore compared to rifled barrel. Now, I'm going to use the match lights, the H&Ns. These seem to be pretty accurate for the most part. Our only handicap here is going to be my vision. So, like I said, I can see distance perfectly. It's just looking at the sights up close. So, my center mass shooting is great, But when it comes to precision shooting with open sights, it's a little more difficult. So we're going to try to figure that out. But we are going to use the Splatterburst target here. This here is our 8-inch, and I want to thank them once again. I'll leave a link down below for you guys. But they really make a difference, so we can definitely see where the impact point is. I can even see where the impact point is. So we're our usual about 32, 33 feet. Go ahead and take a quick look here. Yeah, so let's see how well we do. All right, 6 shots, pellet version first. I don't know what happened with that one. Okay, there's 6 shots with the pellet version. It looks like we had 1 flyer there. But anyway, I told you the handicap is me with these sights. So let's try the BB version and we'll see how well that groups. Okay, now the BB version. Let's shoot 6 shots with that, see how well it groups, and we'll come back and put pellets in. Well, actually, the BB version did quite well. Quite well. Okay, now let's put pellets in the BB version and see how well we do with that. Okay, now we'll use the Matchlight pellets, the same pellets we use in our rifled barrel. And we've got those in our smooth barrel with the pellet shell. So let's see how well this one does. Is that it, or we got one more? Got one more. Well, not too bad. We got 3 of our pellets really close to the same hole, and then the other 3 spread out. But for a smoothbore, not too shabby at all. So now you guys see the difference between all 3. All right, let's move on to the next segment. All right, let's test the trigger on our Mark 6 and see how well it does. What I'm going to do is I'm going to test it both in double action and single action. It has I'm going to tell you right now, it has a fantastic trigger for a revolver. It really does. So we've got our trusty Lyman trigger gauge. Let's try double action first. See how well that does. All right. Okay, that was 8 pounds, 9 ounces in double action. 8 pounds, 9 ounces. Okay, let's move on and try single action. All right. 3 pounds, 4 ounces. 3 pounds, 4 ounces. Very, very smooth trigger. It's really enjoyable to shoot, that's for sure. All right, let's move on to the next segment. All right, my favorite part of any review, as you guys know, is the plinking portion, because we actually get to hit stuff, knock stuff down. It's pretty cool. So I have our little shooting cart set up at our usual distance, a little over 10 meters. Go ahead and take a quick look. You see I have a few cool little targets set up there. So I got 8 targets set up. I got 6 shots here. How are we going to address that? I'm going to show you. All right, we're going to start at the bottom. We're going to work our way to the left, and then we'll hit the top row. All right, let's do a double action on the bottom, just for fun. All right, and we got the top. Now, how many rounds do we have left? Oh, we're out. That's 6 shots. That's why it's nice to have 2 of these. Okay, single action. How about the little metal guy? Yep. Can. The other can. That's it. But yeah, these are a lot of fun. They really are. A lot of fun. So let's move on to the next segment and wrap this thing up. All right, let's wrap this up with our conclusion. Well, I have to say, these are some great looking pistols. They really are. The fit and finish on them, absolutely incredible. But like anything else, let's talk about the negatives. And I'll tell you, my negatives on these, I would say, is the accuracy. I was a little disappointed in the accuracy. I think it could be better, especially when you're shooting lead pellets or whatever, pellets out of a rifled barrel. I'm expecting a little bit better accuracy than that. It should be significantly improved over the smooth barrel BB. And as you saw, it really wasn't. So that would be my only disappointment. But then again, these are not precision target pistols. These are designed for plinking in the backyard, having fun, shooting cans down, doing things like that. And for that, they're outstanding. So let's talk about the positives. I touched on this briefly. The build quality on these is incredible. They really are. The fit, the finish. And you know what else you don't see? You don't see any of the annoying writing on these. You know what I'm talking about? The big warning labels and what have you. They're not on these, which is great. What else? What else? You gotta like, well, that stand does not work that well. There we go. Okay. You gotta like the feet per second that it produced. It was right there, exactly. They claimed 420, we were there, plus we exceeded that, especially with the pellet version. But I told you, and I'll touch on that again, the difference in these shells, the difference between the BB shells, which shoots the BB from the actual tip. So the BB sets in the tip. Then when you have the pellet shells, as we discussed this before, the pellet, let's get one with the pellet in it. The pellet shells shoot from the back end of the action. I'm telling you, these stands, sometimes they work great, sometimes they don't. There we go. Okay, so remember the pellet shells, we put the pellet in the back. And then so the pellet actually fires from the back of the shell, comes to the front and then into the barrel. So you're actually exceeding the length of the barrel with that extra distance. And it actually makes a difference when it comes to velocity. Okay, what else? The great thing about these too is you can get the BB version as we demonstrated, and you can put the pellet shells in it. And then you're going to get the higher velocity, and you can shoot the lead pellets if you want to shoot little steel targets or something like that, so you don't have as bad of type of ricochets that you would with the steel BBs. Also, I don't know if you guys know this, the speed loader and the BB shells or the pellet shells will also fit in the Schofield. Yes, the Schofield, and it has the same type of action where it breaks open. So you got to like that. So if you have a Schofield, you can always get the Webley shells, and it'll work in that. They're synonymous, but they're the only ones, just those two. So performance, like I said, other than the accuracy, other than that, I loved it. You get about 70 shots per 12 gram CO2, so you get about 70 good shots. The cool factor on these, off the chart. Seriously, they're just to hold it. I mean, it's a 2.5 pound gun, so I mean it's outstanding. And again, I'm going to emphasize the trigger, how smooth it is in both double and single action. So it's definitely, if you're a revolver person, it definitely warrants being in your collection. That's for sure. How would I rate these overall? Because of a little lack of accuracy, but then I got to give it heavy points for the cool factor. I'm going to give it 4.5 stars. So they're going to get 4.5 stars. So once again, hey, thanks for tuning in for this episode of Airgun Detectives. Don't forget, this is where we take the mystery out of the airgun. Until next time, I hope you guys get a lot of shooting in, your families are all well and healthy. So God bless you, and we'll see you next time. Take care.